We're here again. It is Fantasy Cares presents the Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny 2025. It is the catch-all edition. This may, I think, JMic, round out our entire Hootenanny for this year. We will have talked almost 50 players. I think I've got 48 or 49 write-ups. There are two or three more write-ups that I'm going to do, the guys that I watched that we didn't talk about, and so I haven't done the write-ups. But this has been a ton of fun. It's an interesting class. We're not done yet. There are a few more pieces to sink our teeth into, but it is fantastic to see you. It's fantastic to see the chat. There are already over 100 people in here. It is popping, and I'm excited to do this at least for one more week with you, JMic.
And apologies to the family of Trevor Etienne. Apologies to the family of Woody Marks and the Montrell Johnson Juniors of the world. And dare we say, Kalel Mulling.
I got
Kalel Mullings.
apologize.
Kalel Mullings. Apologies. Kyle Manungai. There are players all over the place that I think are really interesting players, but we are not going to be talking about them today. So I think the fun that we do get to do is round out our time with a lot of players that I think people still are pretty excited about. We've got several receivers that we've got, a quarterback who maybe his most impressive attribute is not throwing the ball. And then we have a running back who was once the head of his backfield and then became part of a committee and still shined a little bit when it comes to his process throughout this actual draft season. 7 players in total. That means that we've run the gauntlet on 50 some odd players, Zach, and you have been brilliant week in, week out, dancing and talking through all of your musings and things that have inspired you throughout this time. So we're calling upon your brilliance once more.
I'm tapped out this week, JMic. No, what I've got this week is not a fantasy football tidbit. It's not something that's going to help you win your league, but I think it's a win beyond league and beyond fantasy football. And it's something we have been incredibly lucky to pair with and be part of Fantasy Cares. And not just with the Hootenanny, but being part of the Scott Fishbowl and going to live drafts and helping with the charity aspect. I've been able to do a Toys for Tots drive in the town that I live in, be able to make a positive difference. And that to me is incredible. And right now, if you were happening to be watching this live, you could go to fantasycares.org/campaigns and you could get my film notes. So if you've been watching the Hootenanny, if you've been following us along, you can get all 50 players that I have written about as a thank you from me for just a donation to Fantasy Cares. And we're not asking for a specific donation. It is any donation. You can set the price for whatever you think you can give. And I'm so happy and so proud of the fact that last year we raised $1,000 with this. I mean, I can't believe that there were enough people that were interested enough in what we have to say about these players to raise that money. And I think that this kind of dovetails into, especially now, there are a lot of people who are feeling unseen. There are a lot of people who are having struggles, and it's going to be incredibly important that we who can help do help, and that we do as much as we possibly can on the charity side of things. And Toys for Tots, I am so thankful and so lucky to be part of such a great organization with Fantasy Cares, and the donations that we get go back out to do good with Toys for Tots. They go to Every Meal fighting childhood hunger. They go to No Kid Hungry. They go to Feeding America. They go to JDRF, improving lives and curing type 1 diabetes. They go to the Sarah Foundation. They go to Break the Hold. They go to so many different organizations, Make-A-Wish, American Cancer Society, on and on and on and on. And I think that it's the Fred Rogers quote, look for the helpers. And if you can be the helper, that's even better, because then people are looking to you. And it's almost like dropping a rock into a pond where you see that ripple. When the Scott Fish Bowl started, or when I got wind of the Scott Fish Bowl, it was 480 people, and Fantasy Cares was taking in around, I think it was like $3,500 or $4,000. This past year, the Scott Fish Bowl had over 40,000 applicants, over 4,000 people played, and we raised over $500,000 in Fantasy Cares last year. And we just, that momentum, we need to keep going, and to be a small part of it is incredible. So I don't mean to take up everything talking about this, but it's so near and dear to what you and I both hold, as important. And so it's, to me, taking a little bit of time talking about it. And again, you can go donate. There's not just the rookie film notes. If you want those, awesome. They're at fantasycares.org/campaigns. But there are other ways to donate. There's a Masters contest right now, but you can also straight up donate to Fantasy Cares. And if you don't have the funds to donate your time, donate a retweet or a repost somewhere. Just tell somebody about it, because it all makes a difference.
I was going to just echo you, Zach, telling you to say it again for the people in the back. That was a huge win when we think through what Fantasy Cares is doing, has done, and will continue to do, and the positive impact that they have across so many lines throughout culture. And I'm finding the impact to be humbling, and it's cool that we get to be a piece of that, and that they share this platform for us to be able to continue to do the thing that we thoroughly enjoy doing, Zach, which is talking to these rookies and having a good time in doing so. With that said, it's time to get to it, Zach. Again, we have 7 players left that we'll talk through this evening. This is our Gotta Catch 'Em All show, mostly receivers. We've got Jalen Milroe, quarterback for Alabama, that we'll get to eventually, and Jaden Blue out of Texas. And so we'll actually start with a player who has been up and down throughout this draft season. I think people originally thought he ran something like a 5.9 40 or something crazy that took place. Wide receiver Xavier Restrepo. When we look at the life and times of Xavier Restrepo, obviously he came into prominence prior to this season being a standout wide receiver at the University of Miami. Now, one of the cool pieces in reference to that, though, is that he got paired with the eventual #1 overall pick in Cam Ward and did some really positive things in this season. When we're looking at Xavier Restrepo's numbers, he was, again, 5 years at Miami. Big demerits for the COVID life, but it is what it is. In his best season, 2024, 69 receptions, 1,127 yards, 11 touchdowns. Last season, while he had more catches, didn't have as many yards, but still, throughout his career at Miami, we're looking at a guy who totaled 200 receptions for 2,844 yards and 21 scores. So, productive receiver, Zach. Let's talk a little bit about Xavier Restrepo, and hopefully you have nicer things to say than the folks who have said that he's slower than Nana's social security check.
Does he want to race? I think he's got me right now. I'm on one leg.
Who's to say?
In the year of our Lord 2025, we will not be slot shamed. We will not be self-conscious of the length of our routes. We will not be bullied because we're not prototypical size or because our position isn't designated with an X. Limited to the slot doesn't mean that Xavier Restrepo is limited in fantasy. Perhaps the headiest player in the incoming group of rookie receivers, Restrepo is always in the play. He continues to work. He does a great job coming back to his quarterback to provide a pressure release valve when the quarterback is in trouble. And he will even come back to throw a block to spring his running back. Restrepo revels in blocking, putting a hit on his defender regardless of whether the play is designed to go to his side or not. There's no like half field read, take a play off. Restrepo is hitting somebody. As a route runner, Restrepo excels at creating separation windows with his quick breaks at the stem of routes. He is the definition of a show open receiver rather than one who needs to be thrown open.
And that's a fantastic point, Zach, in terms of his ability to consistently show open. And that ability will afford him the opportunity to be in somebody's wide receiver rotation because he's that talented of an actual wide receiver. The other really interesting piece about Xavier Restrepo, he reminds me, and not play style, but hear me out, Zach, with what you just described and what I was able to see in his gameplay, he reminds me of Hines Ward in that when Hines Ward was on the field, like you constantly knew whether he was making his plays here and there in the passing game. Obviously, he was much ballyhooed for what he was able to do in the blocking game, and not so much that Xavier Restrepo is some man crusher when it comes to blocking, but he's consistently getting effort and in the mix. And I think that kind of effort paired with his ability to be quick in and out of breaks and be a quarterback's best friend in that regard, specifically short to intermediate. And he did a few things downfield too at times, not as consistent as one might have hoped, but still, Restrepo seems like a player that could fool around and be useful in many offenses in the NFL out the gate. That said, he is on this catch-all show for a reason, Zach. So let's talk about Cam Ward's number one and why he is not number one in this class.
Well, many of the top receivers in the NFL have the ability to win outside and then slide back inside to exploit matchups. But I don't think this is feasible for Restrepo. He will be a slot receiver relying on volume instead of yardage to put up fantasy points. I think he can be bothered by contact at the line of scrimmage and in route, which again, sliding inside in that slot gives him a little bit of space to work with. And he also gives up on plays if he's been harassed on the line of scrimmage. Unfortunately, Restrepo will sometimes run his routes to contact. We talk about him liking to hit people when he blocks. He also likes to hit people when he runs his route. And that puts himself at a disadvantage trying to prove that he's the tough guy. Not every team in the NFL will be in the market for a slot receiver that can eat up targets. So draft capital landing spot will be especially important for Restrepo. But if he lands somewhere with a younger quarterback that would benefit from quick separation and getting the ball out in a hurry, or an old one on the West Coast that lost a quick wide receiver, I think Restrepo could be a high volume slot and potentially a steal later in rookie drafts.
Yeah, I think if people can get past the whole 40 gate for Restrepo, we're looking at a player I think that can be interesting when it comes to just being a part of a useful offense. And we'll leave it there.
Sub 4 3 cone though. So like that's the thing is people look at the 40. Not everybody separates with that speed. Some guys separate with the quickness, and that's Restrepo. He's a 3 cone, not a 40.
And we'll take it. We'll take it. On to the next one. We are moving to who some were calling Travis Hunter's kryptonite a couple seasons ago. We're going out to the West Coast to talk a little bit of Elic Ayomanor out of Stanford. He went to the combine, had a very positive performance there in the things that he did complete. 4.44 40, say that 5 times fast, 38.5-inch vertical jump, 10.7 broad jump. Go back to his actual production on the field, and it wasn't as outstanding as one might hope it to be. 62 receptions in 2023, 63 receptions in 2024, 1,013 yards in 2023, 831 yards in 2024, 6 touchdowns in both seasons. And in both seasons, Stanford's offense was constipated. Not good, not positive. Things were just generally not working at all. That said, Ayomanor had his moments in an offense that was not proficient in passing the ball at all. And again, I think was able to bust onto the scene in 2023 in that really fantastic game that Stanford had against Colorado. And he went for 1,000,000,001 yards with Travis Hunter guarding him for a lot of that game. So, Zach, is all the hype about Ayomanor worth it?
It's a name I've been hearing a ton recently, but whether it's a comment on the future or simply because Universal Orlando is opening a new theme park, my autocorrect keeps changing Elic Ayomanor's name to Epic. In its defense, Darkmoor, the sepulchral land dedicated to Dracula, the Wolfman, and the rest of the Universal monsters, does look incredible. Ayomanor is a hot name around draft circles, and it's easy to see why. He flashes some brilliance with pacing, using changes of speed to get past defenders that he's lulled into complacency. If Ayomanor gets over the top, he uses his length and leaping ability to win at the catch point. He is a smooth hands catcher, reaching out to meet the ball, bringing it in rather than letting the ball come to him. And one interesting positive of Ayomanor's game is how quickly he identifies another receiver getting the ball. And this allows him to either block, which he's really good at, or completely clear out deep, taking his defender away from the play. That's really smart. And you don't always see college players with that heads up ability.
Yeah, the Stanford education shining through a great deal in that regard. But when we think through what we watched on film, Zach, I think one of the things that stands out the most for me was that a player that is 6'2", 206, in terms of how he measured at the combine, I would have assumed with the way that he plays, he would have measured bigger than 6'2", 206. And not that 6'2", 206 is small, but the man plays big. He is a high pointer. He is someone who will try to run through your face. He's not necessarily looking to avoid a ton of contact, and not necessarily that he's looking to seek it. Not a heat-seeking missile in that regard. That said, the things that he's able to do as what some would call a traditional X in an NFL offense would be positive, specifically his ability to go get it. Now, is he always successful in those attempts? No. However, again, when we talk about a player who is far more successful in those 50-50 moments, at least in the games that I saw, than not, if he can continue to not get totally defeated at the line of scrimmage, which would often be a kryptonite of his at times for some of the better corners that he faced, then he's got the opportunity again to provide an NFL offense, something that people are longing for in this type of player. They'll say the names that will make us think of this archetype of receiver and the name Higgins and so forth. And he's no T. Higgins, Zach. So let's talk a little bit about his opportunities at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, so the high point highlights are fun, but I think they can obscure some of Ayomanor's struggles with physicality. You mentioned it. He can be bullied at the line of scrimmage with a jam. He also has trouble separating early in route if he's contacted. Even against zone coverages, Ayomanor goes through stretches where he just doesn't separate at all. The quick twitch, change of directions aren't a feature of Ayomanor's repertoire. He's really not a come back and get it player. So, we talk about the way Restrepo would come back and let his quarterback out of some trouble. That's not Ayomanor at all. When Ayomanor catches the ball underneath coverage, he also has this really bad habit of retreating immediately. So as soon as he catches it, he's taking 2 steps back to try to create space for himself. But ultimately, this makes it very difficult for him to add yards post-catch, so he doesn't. It's easy to see why there are a lot of people pointing to Elic Ayomanor as the darling sleeper of the 2025 wide receiver class. His spectacular plays on deep throws are the stuff dreams are made of. Unfortunately, he feels more like a third option to me in an NFL offense. And without much after the catch, Ayomanor is relying on the quarterback for nearly everything. But the new Harry Potter ride looks epic anyway.
and with Ayomanor and how he wins, Zach, he reminds me a good bit of like the Gushers fruit snacks, in that there was a time where you'd have the Gushers and you're like, man, this is awesome. Like it's got the fancy stuff in the middle, and like the sensation's kind of weird, but hey, this is a really good candy. And then you recognize that you can't live off of Gushers. It's not something that is going to sustain you for long periods. And so much of what his film offered were these moments where I can really get behind this play. And so many more moments where, and again, while some of it was an offense that struggled a great deal at Stanford, there were just opportunities that were left out. And I don't know if it's a maneuverability piece for him, if it's an athleticism from a standpoint of elusivity, I don't know. But it just lacking in some respects with that. Making our way to Nebraska to talk through Isaiah Neyor, measures in at 6'4", 218. World traveler, Zach, when we think through his time at the collegiate level, began his college career at Wyoming. Way out there, it's going to be windy in Laramie. Moving on then to a year with the University of Texas. And then finally finishing things off with Patrick Mahomes Jr. At quarterback there for the Cornhuskers. Okay, not really Patrick Mahomes Jr., but he fancies himself that. Anyway, all of that to say a whole lot of traveling, Zach, for not very much production. His best season at Wyoming was 2021, 44 receptions for 878 yards and 12 scores. But this last season at Nebraska, only 34 catches, 455 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Now, with that, again, someone measuring in at 6'4", 218, running a 4.40, having a vertical jump of 38 inches, and broad jump of 11 feet, 1 inch. That is putting you in rare athleticism categories, Zach. And Neyor is very much trending in a positive direction in a lot of draft circles.
Yeah, the athleticism matters in athletics, guys. They have a white whale this year for sure with Isaiah Neyor. He's 6'4", 218, ran that 4.40 at the combine, put up a 9.97 relative athletic score. That's out of a possible 10. So you're talking 0.03 of a point from a perfect relative athletic score. And he boasts the number 1 athleticism score in the receiver class this year. There are a lot of satisfied size coming from parents' basements all across the fantasy community. For his part, Neyor does some good things on the field as well. Against man coverage, he's fantastic at attacking one side of a defender, making the corner drop his hips. And then when Neyor sees this, he takes advantage of that leverage over the top for deep strikes. He is, however, much more adept at beating zone coverages in the short and intermediate areas. So he's good deep against man, much better against zone, short, and intermediate. In order to attack zones, he can split the level working off the back of the underneath defender's head, but staying under the safety, giving his quarterbacks ample area to throw the ball into. It's really nice. You don't see guys work that way often. Usually it's one or the other, but he does a nice job splitting that zone.
And there's a place in many NFL offenses for the guy who's going to stretch the field. Now, from a consistent fantasy perspective, is that something that's going to excite you? Not particularly. However, I think people will consistently be tantalized by the potential and the what could be for a player with his athleticism. And I do think that specifically for as large as he is, I like his ability to be able to catch the ball outside of his frame. He's not afraid to be able to go and try to get the ball wherever it is. Whereas the consistency in terms of playing big may not be there, but he does have the capability. And again, and I think the thing that you highlighted is something that was strange for my brain to try to comprehend. His ability to win long, vertically up the field against man, and then the weirdness of winning zone underneath and intermediate. It was, I don't know, it was just different. However, he's gonna likely have a place if he can get any kind of capital. But what drawbacks did you see when you thought through Neyor? And again, 5 collegiate seasons, Zach. I know that there's injury and red shirt and COVID and everything else, but not much to show for 3 stops and lots of disappointments.
Yeah, for a player whose calling card recently added speed in all caps at the combine, Neyor is surprisingly nonchalant off the line of scrimmage. I don't think he gets an initial jump forward with his break very quickly, and this allows cover corners to get hands on him and stay on his hip. And when this happens, Neyor does not have short area quickness to create that see-it separation. His size is intimidating for players trying to cover him deep, but it's a non-factor in the blocking game because he simply doesn't. He's just like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to block. In the world of spreadsheets go green, Neyor is going to be a poorly guarded secret. The sleeper already on everyone's lips. But unless he gets first 3-round capital, all of those numbers get multiplied by 0. If Neyor does go early, for me, it's still difficult to find a fit from the film perspective that will fulfill that promise for fantasy. I just don't quite see it. He's got the deep threat, but there's so much lacking in between.
Very MVSington of him. On to the second TCU wide receiver that we've talked about within our rookie Hootenanny, Zach. Jack Bech, a.k.a. Senior Bowl Darling, a.k.a. A player that's been riding below the radar for a long time. And all of a sudden, things are starting to stir up pretty well at the right time for Jack Bech. 6'1", 214 is how he measured at the combine. Did not run a 40, however, 34.5-inch vertical jump, 10.5 broad jump, and a 4.2 20-yard shuttle. So some positive pieces there when we think through not an explosive athlete per se, but not a terrible athlete either. When we look at his actual production, one of the things that you'll see, Zach, this past season, while Savion Williams was maybe the name that got a lot of the people excited for his overall physical prowess, 62 catches for 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns. Obviously a really good season, but behind all of that, Zach, little did we know, Jack Bech's career actually began at LSU, and as a freshman, went for 43 catches, 489 yards, and 3 scores. Now, I don't know exactly who was on that team, but I have a pretty good idea that you'll be able to tell us who he shared time with and for the Tigers.
Again, in 2021, a freshman led LSU in targets and receptions. And that in itself isn't surprising. LSU is an assembly line of great wide receivers, and the incoming 2021 class was stacked, except it wasn't Brian Thomas Jr., and it wasn't Malik Neighbors. It was Jack Bech who out-targeted 4 future NFL players, BTJ, Neighbors, Kayshon Boutte, and Josh Palmer. Bech is an intriguing player because of his versatility. He can be used all over the field and even deployed like a move tight end in situations that would benefit from an extra blocker, which is kind of a nice chess piece to have. Bech is not a burner by any stretch, but he is at home running crosses and outs versus zone coverage. His physicality at the catch point allows Bech to make plays in traffic and over the middle of the field. I think he plays bigger than he measured, and especially from the slot. He's one of those like mismatched kind of big slot guys. And once the ball is in his hand, and this is the weird thing because he's not necessarily fast, but Bech is very shifty with the ball in hand, creating far more yards after the catch than it seems like he should. He catches the ball and you're like, oh, that's it. And then no, there's another 2 or 3 or 5. He's not breaking one, but he's adding yards after the catch.
One of those players, Zach, that we often talk about of understanding the geometry of the field. The only difference is he doesn't necessarily have the physical tools that allow him to break those big gains or those big opportunities, but being able to tack on a little here, a little there to those opportunities that he gets is a really fun thing to be able to see from Jack Bech. I do think that there's so much good when we think through his ability to play a possession game and be a reliable target for an offense. Again, maybe not the athleticism that's going to allow him to really shine, but he's going to get to a place and I think be able to create opportunities because of his reliability, because I think that he does have the ability to get where he needs to on the field to consistently be maybe not wide open, but create enough separation, specifically in the intermediate space, that allows him to be able to make plays. Like, that's just a good player, Zach. Tell us a little bit, though, about any drawbacks that you may see when you watch them.
Although Bech is a zone breaker when he can move through one level, those little outs and crossers, he struggles when he has to move through multiple layers, and sometimes even when he has to find a hole to sit in. So like the routes that aren't just constantly moving. Against man coverage, he has trouble breaking from contact, which leads to a majority of his catches in traffic. And he's good at that, but it makes catches more difficult when you've got a defender on your back. And Bech doesn't have the long speed to consistently separate deep. And although he's quick, he doesn't always set up defenders the way he needs to create that leverage and separation in short areas against man coverage. The fantasy community is thirsty for some more late round lightning from Senior Bowl darlings, and nobody fits that bill better than Jack Bech. He was the game's MVP. He scored the winning touchdown, but that small sample size only goes so far. I think it seems unlikely that Bech is able to wrestle away enough targets to be really useful for fantasy, even though he's a good player. So it doesn't really matter to me where he lands. He's kind of that third fiddle. But again, a nice NFL player. But we're looking fantasy.
Would day 2 capital change your mind at all, Zach?
It might, and a landing spot where a team is going to spread out and allow him to play in the slot. You know, again, if you're looking at those the Shanahan offenses that we really like, where they're spreading players out, and again, the way he blocks, the physicality of Bech would fit in an offense where you've got speed guys on the outside and you need somebody eating up possessions on the inside, especially with the junk coverage, zone in the middle. He'd be good at that.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think he's an intriguing prospect to watch, and I think if gets day 2 capital, I'm interested.
Yeah. Well, and again, that freshman year is wild.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, coming in, that is as impressive of a feat as almost anything that we can look at for the wide receivers in this class. Yes, Travis Hunter was awesome in terms of the raw numbers that he did, and Tep being doing what he did in the last 2 seasons, but coming in and being the guy or the primary target earner amongst that group of players that we know ended up being special.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to beat. Hard to beat. On to the last wide receiver of the evening for us today. We are talking Tory Horton out of Colorado State. Go Rams, go Rams. 6'2", 6 feet, 2.5 inches tall, 196 pounds, runs a 4.41 at the combine, vertical jump of 37.5 inches. Tory Horton, another guy who saw a good bit of success in prior seasons, not so much in this past season. Unfortunately, cut short. I believe it was due to injury, Zach, but I did not garner what specific injury that he had that I know was season ending at the time. Regardless, we're looking in 2023. That was his best season, where he garnered 96 catches for 1,136 yards and 8 scores. And if we look at the year before that, in 2022, only 71 catches, which, a good bit down from what he did in 2023, but gave you just about the same amount of yards, 1,131 yards, 15.9 yards per reception, and still the 8 touchdowns. So we're looking at 2022 and 2023 as a really talented player who was super productive, obviously got the ball a ton, and had injury cut his season short in 2024 to maybe be what could have been. Prior to all of that, he was running mate for my boy, Romeo Dobbs, Mr. Ordinary himself. But Zach, let's talk a little bit about Tory Horton, the player that he became, and possibly what could be.
Yeah. So you mentioned Tory Horton put up back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons in 22 and 23 before exiting his senior season with a knee injury, just 35 yards short of the Mountain West Conference all-time receiving record. His brother Tyler was a 2-time All-Mountain West first-teamer at cornerback at Boise State. And his sister Jean is a professional volleyball player. I'm just imagining the Thanksgiving football games at the Horton household. That is going to be absolutely wild. But throughout his career, Tory Horton has driven targets. His quick release off the line of scrimmage helps him get open early, and his sharp breaks create separation underneath. If I had $1 for every time I wrote plus crosser, plus crosser, plus crosser, I wouldn't even need to be sitting here. I would be somewhere on a beach. I would have a Mai Tai. I wouldn't have a Mai Tai, but I would be on a beach. I would have my feet in the sand. It would be excellent. His quick release off the line of scrimmage helps him get open early. His sharp breaks create that separation underneath, but don't think that he's limited to working short and intermediate routes. Horton possesses that 4.41 speed, and he will use it to get over the top of the defense. Although he's not particularly great above the rim, Horton does track deep balls really well. He stacks up defenders, and he puts himself in a position to make plays where he doesn't have to go up and win those 50-50 balls. And no matter where Horton catches the ball, he is always a threat to add yards after the catch. He's one of the few really consistent yards after catch players that I've watched in this class.
Good hands, good yak ability. That is going to be a recipe that's going to put you in position to be thought highly of at the next level. And I think that his ability, for me, consistently to be reliable when the ball is coming his way at all levels of the field. I like his ability to track the football. I like his ability to secure the ball, and I like what he's able to garner for extra yardage. And I think those are the primary pieces that make me a Tory Horton fan. And I think that essentially what he lacks in dynamism vertically, to be able to do a lot of spectacular body control stuff that, just the sickest of athletes have. There's a reliability and a steadfastness in who he is as a consistent ground player that I'm very in on as a player. And again, Zach, with the last wide receiver here, was there anything that you saw that you were like, not for me?
Yeah, as often as Horton comes open, there are still times that he struggles with that physical man coverage when he has to fight through a defender at the catch point, or sometimes even in traffic. There's a good chance that Horton isn't coming down with the ball.
Mhm.
And at times, it's bad enough that Horton will drop balls simply trying to avoid an anticipated hit.
Mm.
And I think blocking is a struggle as well. Horton is more of a traffic cone blocker where he's rerouting defenders around him rather than like moving them and actually throwing a block. I think it's a long shot for a small conference wide receiver to make his mark in the toughest league in the world. Tory Horton has enough athleticism to get a potential look from an NFL team and a skill set that I think actually fits fairly well into the current landscape of the league. His ability to attack underneath zones and stretch man coverage over the top could help him carve out a role. I'm not sure it's a big enough role to be fantasy relevant, but like
Mhm.
I really like a lot of what he does as a player.
Yep. Just I think he's a fairly consistent player, Zach. That while the capital and opportunity may not be there, curious to see kind of what a second life at the next level might bring. Okay, to the lone quarterback on the evening, Zach. We are going to Alabama to talk about an extremely strong player, an extremely positive asset on the ground. And while he has a pretty big arm, definitely not an accurate one. And his first name is Jalen. Uh, now, if you did not know Jalen Milroe, then you might have thought we were talking about Jalen Hurts. Similar, but not the same, Zach. Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. We're looking at a guy who was flat out getting it done, specifically on the ground, and being just an athletic marvel in that first season that he had in 2023. That was really the opportunities that he had to start the entire season. We're looking at a guy who completed 187 of 284 passes in 2023 for 65.8 completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. 2024 comes along, out goes Nick Saban, in comes Kalen DeBoer. There's a feeling out process, trying to be able to make sure that Jalen Milroe is on display to be able to succeed. And succeed, he did to a large degree. I didn't even bring up his rushing yards in 2023, Zach, but really 2024 is the one that we want to look at. While the passing numbers weren't spectacular in terms of 2,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions in 2024, what he was able to provide on the ground with 168 attempts, 726 yards, and 20, count them, 20 rushing touchdowns. The man was putting the ball in the end zone from far away, from close, from intermediate. His ability to break open the game with his feet is truly special. Zach, what will you like to tell us about a guy that you fought, scratched, clawed to make sure that we talked about here on the catch-all?
The NFL is going to mess it up again, JMic. And sure, quarterback is the most difficult position to evaluate, but a quarterback who can run but is a terrible passer usually doesn't succeed. A quarterback who can throw but runs like Donatello's statue of David can succeed. We have decades of pocket passers to prove it. But a player with a combination of a little bit of passing ability woven together with the weapon of mobility, that is where money is printed. And I think Jalen Milroe actually is this, and you only have to squint a little bit to see it. The beauty of Jalen Milroe's rushing is that he can succeed in design runs and RPO plays, but he can also eat up ground when he scrambles when none of his receivers come open. The threat of Milroe's legs keep defenses honest, and that allows him time to make short and intermediate throws over the middle and to the boundaries. I think he's best in a clean pocket, aren't we all? Where he has time to work a progression of receivers. Milroe has pretty good accuracy when this happens, delivering balls to his receivers in stride and actually allowing them space to add extra yards after the catch. So there are a few things with his arm that are positives as well as his legs.
I think the thing, Zach, that makes what you say go is the caveat of things around him working and looking as they should. Specifically, when we think about the protection from the offensive line, because there were opportunities that he's shown throughout film and watching games from 2022 when he was kind of spot dutying, 2023 when he was a full-time starter, and then in 2024, one of the most consistent pieces is under a clean pocket. You even, dare I say, like what he provides for you. When things get muddy and he's still wanting to try to force things, it's really disappointing, and it doesn't lend for a lot of faith that that's something that's going to be ironed out at the next level. That said, kid's special on the ground, Zach, but was there anything else that you felt like people need to know about maybe where he comes up short a bit?
Yeah, things definitely break down when teams get pressure on Milroe. He tends to panic. He forgets that he can step up to and through that pressure. And instead of taking off, he continues to look for solutions through the air until it's too late, creates turnovers via interception, creates sacks. And I think his form also breaks down when the heat is turned up. Milroe changes his arm angle, and that causes errant throws. He tends to drop a little bit. And look, even in a clean pocket, his delivery is really stiff and robotic. Think the old hulking Iron Mike pitching machines, with that one arm that's just firing balls on a straight rotation. Like that's all I can see when I see Milroe. So it's not pretty. Sometimes it's functional. Jalen Milroe is absolutely not a lock to succeed at the next level. He has flaws in his processing. He has flaws in his ability under pressure and his delivery, especially off platform. But Jalen Milroe fits squarely in the new archetype of successful quarterbacks that even the NFL hasn't quite figured out yet. And look, they had Lamar Jackson show up to the combine. They wanted him to run as a wide receiver. They let Hurts fall to the second round. Like now he's not quite on their level, but this is a similar archetype. For fantasy, all he needs is for one team to give him a chance in order to be a gold mine.
Zach, where would he have to be drafted for not destination? Where in the actual NFL draft would he have to be drafted for you to see him as a target, like a guy that you're actually actively targeting in rookie drafts?
So obviously first round is the answer. If he landed in a spot, and I would have to kind of figure out where that spot is, I guess maybe a Dallas would be a potential where you're kind of coming up on the tail end of a quarterback there. It would have to be a team that is, not that Dallas is good, but a team that is decent around him, but also a place where he could come in and have a little bit of an offensive line. And again, for fantasy, for what we're talking about, we just need him to be on the field because he's going to be on the field for 17 games. He's a top 12 quarterback easy because of his legs. And then if he can put together a little bit with his arms, now you're creeping up into top 6, top 7,
Mhm.
top 8. Like that's territory where if I can get him in the back end of the first or a second round in a super flex draft, I'm smiling at that.
Very good. Over to the final player on the evening and final player for our official rookie Hootenanny catch-all. Running back, Jaden Blue. Now, interesting thing about Jaden Blue, and Zach, I know that you're going to have some more nuggets for us. 5'9", 196 is how he measured in at the combine. So, little fella. Unfortunately, I think that I wouldn't have even predicted or thought that he was that small of a player. And typically working himself in a committee during his time at the University of Texas. And this past season, likely the most proficient when we think through his opportunities because the fact that they also had another running back that they were working in, not draft eligible this year, I don't believe, in terms of Wisner, I believe was his name, but he was a fun player to watch and just bull in a china shop type player. Jaden Blue was a nice compliment, being that his dynamism and his speed were something that they were able to take advantage of. 134 attempts on the ground, 730 rushing yards with 8 scores. Mind that, Zach, with 42 catches for 368 yards and 6 scores in the receiving game in 2024, all of a sudden we're looking at Jaden Blue coming on the actual bandwagon here and adding himself amongst the running backs in this class that we may look to get excited about in the next few weeks.
You know what's really wild about Jaden Blue? His last year in high school was his junior year. He ran for 2,155 yards and 30 touchdowns. That's not bad down there in Texas. The running back renaissance reboot may well be upon us this year, but I think many NFL teams are still committed to a committee carrying the ball, and these timeshares make pass catching an imperative part of fantasy points. And fortunately, I think that's going to be just fine for Jaden Blue coming off that 42 reception season for the Texas Longhorns. Blue might just be the best pass catching running back in the entire 2025 class. He has exceptional hands, but even more impressive to me is his ability to run routes. He can win out of the backfield, but he can also be split out wide to exploit defensive mismatches. And he's running actual wide receiver routes. He's not just running into the flat and turning around. Like he's running stick routes, like he's running wheel routes. He's getting down the field, making plays. Really impressive. And as a runner, Jaden Blue is deadly in space. He has excellent speed and deploys an absolutely devastating dead leg cut that leaves defenders grasping at air just moments after they've had him lined up to tackle.
And while Jaden Blue is not a player that I find particularly special instinctually in the confines of close to the line of scrimmage, I do think, just as you mentioned, Zach, he's the receiver that I think people really wanted to see RJ Harvey be, or even claim that he is. And I think that he's got the actual juice that people say that Travion Henderson has. And not to say that Travion Henderson's slow by any means, and he's a very good player. The actual acceleration and the get up and go that Blue possesses is the stuff that's really unique in the class in terms of setting himself apart from some of his peers. While the down-to-down consistency really bothers me when it comes to his ability to likely be a full-time player, I think that's also the beauty of what Coach Sarkisian at Texas saw in him, and understanding that he's not necessarily going to thrive as the 1A and consistently having those opportunities. But if you're leveraging him in a 1B role, And if you get him out in space, and you put the ball in his hands in the passing game, we are looking at a player that could shock the crap out of teams when we think through fantasy production. However, he's the last player that we're talking about, Zach. And this isn't some Mr. Irrelevant moment that we're having right now. We've got to talk about what do we see in Jaden Blue that we do not like and does not project well.
Jaden Blue hasn't been the primary option in a rushing attack since his junior year of high school. And Texas has been a running back factory, churning out Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson, and Jonathan Brooks over the past few years. And that contributes a little bit to Jaden Blue's secondary role. But I think his lack of power and his inability to break through tackles makes it difficult for Blue to run in between the tackles. And you mentioned him not being great when things are squeezed. When he's squeezed by defensive traffic, he is not able to string cuts together to escape. And just when it seems like Blue has gotten away to the second level, he's often caught from behind by like a foot or a shoestring tackle. In 2022, Jaden Blue was the third ranked running back in the entire class. It's easy to see why from some of the flashes that he exhibited this past season, but Blue's transition to the next level probably hinges on him finding himself as the pass-catching half of a committee. Receptions, I think, should buoy his fantasy output in PPR leagues, and his explosiveness will help him be efficient in the carries that he does end up with. And we talked a little bit about this pre-show, but again, it's one of those creative Shanahan-y offenses where you've got that, the thunder. And I think it was Aerosmith said the lightning never thunders. That's Jaden Blue. He's not a thunder, but man, he can strike.
Yes, and those opportunities that he will get or hopefully get would allow for a lot of fantasy goodness. So I'm excited to see what that shakes out. So Zach, that's it. We've done it. We've made it through all of these players that we've set out to be able to watch, and the hours of film and the tally marks and the plus minuses and the notes. We've done it. We've done it. How do you feel at this point?
I am reasonably impressed that we are still 3 weeks and change ahead of the draft, and we have gone through 50 prospects line fishing, because we are not the numbers groups. We are not spreadsheet go green. We can't scrape data from websites and trawl with the big nets behind the boat. We are line fishing one prospect at a time. But here we are. We have gone through 50 players and had some fun doing it. I really hope that people out there are getting as much out of this. They're probably not as much as we're having fun, but I hope it's close, because this is so much fun. And this class specifically, and the running backs more specifically, has been just an absolute joy to behold. I mean, even we're 20 running backs in. Jaden Blue tonight is a running back that I am potentially interested in rostering. Like, how does that happen? I've never been through a class where this was the case. I mean, I know people keep pointing to 2017. Mm-hmm. That was a different beast altogether. That class up at the top was incredible. I think the only thing close to that would be it was a 2020 where you had there were 4 or 5 backs that were really solid. Mm-hmm. Didn't come to fruition, right. but in terms of evaluation, when you had Jonathan Taylor and that group. But this class, again, we talked Mesa, not a mountain. The peak may not be there, but holy cow, the depth all the way through is going to change the landscape of the NFL and of fantasy football at running back, I think.
Incredibly well said. I think that we are in for some furniture moving come April and beyond. So Zach, we've got these wide receivers, we've got this quarterback, we've got this running back. Um, I don't know that we necessarily need to do a full rundown of where all the players are at this point, but if you want to give ranges for where you see some of these guys, or even how you have these specific players ranked, and I think that if you all want more context, you all know a couple of things to be true when it comes to Zach Reed and his rookie write-ups. One, you can find all of those, every single one of them, for the actual rookie report through Fantasy Cares. That's first. Second, you also know that Zach is going to post, if he hasn't already, all of his film grades on social media. So if you find Zach on Blue Sky, you'll be able to make sure that you can check out what Zach has in reference to those film grades that we've talked through week in and week out to be able to determine where he has these players.
And I'm also always happy to just shout out at me. Like, I'll talk rookies. If you want to go in DMs so your league mates don't see you, doing a little reconnaissance scouting, that's fine too. But if you want to just throw it out there for the world, like, I will have conversations about these players. I enjoy talking about rookies. I enjoy talking fantasy football strategy, and I enjoy interacting with people who also enjoy it. So, Jaden Blue, we talked tonight. Jaden Blue is my running back 14. He's in a tier with Giddens and Raheem Sanders, just above Tootin and RJ Harvey, and like just above Tootin, and then a little more above RJ Harvey. And in, like I said, in that back end of where I'm excited about running backs. In terms of the wide receivers, we talked. I have Xavier Restrepo as my wide receiver 8 in a class where I don't think it's 8 wide receivers deep, but he could end up in a spot where he's a little bit interesting. And then down a little bit further, I have Tory Horton and Ayomanor kind of back to back in this one, just below Luther Burden, who that's gonna be my one in this class, where Luther Burden, the way I see Luther Burden, and Luther Burden the way everybody else that has posted rankings sees Luther Burden, is diametrically opposed. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Luther Burden is amazing. I really do. I'm always cheering to be wrong on players that I have a lower evaluation on. But full disclosure, I have a lower evaluation on Burden. And then again, Bech, and then Neyor is not really a player that I'm particularly interested in at all for fantasy. In terms of quarterbacks, I don't see a lot of difference between Ward, between Milroe, and I'm spacing on the
Jackson Dart or Shador?
And Dart, yeah. So no, I know I'm lower on Shador Sanders than probably the world. Right now, for me, it's like a sandwich of Dart, Ward, and Milroe, and I'm not excited about them as quarterbacks for fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I do think what Milroe does with his legs is the recipe for fantasy points, but I think he's the least likely to land somewhere where he's starting. So, an interesting kind of view of it, but this is not the Anthony Richardson where we were looking at Richardson like he does not throw the ball well. I understand he went early, and so people drafted him early. I think Milroe throws the ball better than Richardson ever has in his entire life. which is wild because he's not getting the same love. The NFL continues to make these same mistakes. They continue to draft the uber athletic quarterback who's not really a quarterback and try to make them a quarterback, which doesn't work. Or they draft the guy who is a good quarterback but has no mobility and then try to put him in an offense where he's going to be mobile, and it drives me batty. Like, there are a few guys who ended up in places, and even Lamar Jackson, even Jalen Hurts, even Josh Allen, who is the one kind of outlier in this whole thing where he was not a great thrower and became one. That was still a mistake, even though it worked out and it was beautiful.
Yep.
So it's interesting, but like Milroe is probably the quarterback in this class that I will end up with because I think he'll be the cheapest of the three. And I'm not really interested in Sanders at all. So I talk more about these guys than I should have, but that's where I'm at.
Nope. I think that's great context for people to be able to run with there. As far as I'll be brief here as we close up shop. The way that I had the receivers ordered in terms of the actual film grades, Jack Bech graded out highest for me. I had Xavier Restrepo grading out number 2. I had Tory Horton grading out as the 3 of that group. Elic Ayomanor. Again, some of the things that I saw from him I liked a lot, but didn't see it consistently, and it bothered me. And then, as you said, Isaiah Neyor. There's that.
We appreciate whoever suggested him.
Yeah, and I've been feeling like a crazy person for a long time, Zach, thinking that why everyone loved Anthony Richardson, but then we act like Jalen Milroe can't play, and I'm confused by that because I have him graded out much higher than, I won't say much, that's not fair. I have him graded out higher than Anthony Richardson, and my track record with quarterbacks hasn't been great. So take it the way you will.
Well, but like, and mine has been good, but I think it's not quarterback evaluation because I'm evaluating fantasy, and so mine has been good because I was in on Lamar Jackson as the quarterback one in that class, even though Mayfield was in there and everyone thought Mayfield was great, and Mayfield is a good player. In on Hurts, even though people weren't. I feel like I backhanded complimented Jordan Love in that group where I said, everyone's looking at Love like he's the Russian quarterback that you want. Really, you should be looking at Hurts. And that to me is it. You find the running quarterbacks and then check the box of whether or not they can be a functional quarterback as well. And if they can do both of those things, I'm in. Especially for fantasy, the NFL has to figure out how to play them. I can't help that. You can't help that. Mm-hmm. We're trying. We need more NFL GMs, more coaching staffs listening to the Dynasty Dummies. Hootenanny will take you places. But
tell them get on board. Sheesh, get on board. Look, we've got better staying power than most NFL GMs at this point, Zach.
That's true.
I will mention briefly the where I have Jaden Blue, running back out of Texas. His film grade nestles him literally right between Raheem Sanders and RJ Harvey for me. So that
bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. That puts him looks like at RB14 for me. My goodness, struggling here at the end. My body's falling apart as me.
Allergic to Rocket.
Yeah. No, I think it's just a little too close to Bayshall Tootin is what it was. That said, Zach, we've done it. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and I know that you'll have some kind words as we close up shop. But as always, I'm grateful that we get to do this together. I'm grateful that you continue to even want to do this with me, and I'm grateful that through it all, we've gone from being guys who just like to hang out with each other in the podcast space, and to becoming actual friends, to becoming family and brothers that legitimately care for each other through whatever we're dealing with throughout the course of life. So thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you for the time. Thank you to Fantasy Cares for showing us love and allowing us the opportunity and the platform to do the things that we thoroughly enjoy. And I think another awesome year of the Hootenanny in the books, Zach.
Yeah, and it has been quite a journey. Was it 2018? You came on the day 2 Dynasty Dummies draft show, and from there, and it's so funny to me because so many of my best friends, my family, came from this stupid game that we play. This game about a game that, I mean, it's fantastic, but it doesn't matter a hill of beans in the grand scheme of things. But it has brought me you, who I consider a brother.
Yeah.
It's brought me Russ. It's brought me to Fantasy Cares. Just so many people and so much goodness from this foolish game and from evaluating rookies where we fully acknowledge, we're throwing darts in a hurricane at this point, especially because the most important piece of information is still yet to come. And even then, we don't know because there are so many factors, but it's been incredible. It's been another fantastic year, thanks to you and thanks to the people who listen, the people who could show up in the chat, and the people who allow us this platform to do what we do. It is so awesome and such a great piece of my life. I get so much enjoyment and fulfillment out of it. One last time, I'm going to plug fantasycares.org/campaign. Any donation, we thank you with my rookie film notes. If you don't want the rookie film notes, donate anyway, because Fantasy Cares is amazing, and the reach with goodness that we have at Fantasy Cares is incredible. That ripples out and does tenfold the amount of good. The Hootenanny has wrapped up. We can put away the shoes until next year. We can clear off the dance floor. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. You can find us at Dynasty Dummies. JMic is at JMic Check. I am at Tacit Assassin 13. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. Thank you for listening.